Welcome, one and all, to Tech Tuesday, the best way to start your early to mid work week, bringing you the latest news in tech. Today is April 8th, 2025. Let's dive right into the news of the past week. Starting off with our headline story. This week, both OpenAI and Anthropic both announced changes to their AI platforms, specifically targeting college students. For those that don't know, OpenAI is the company behind ChatGPT, and Anthropic is the Amazon-based company known for its Claude series of AI models. So starting off with Claude, they announced a new version of their Claude model that they claim is meant to be tailored specifically for higher education institutions. And this new version of Claude comes with what they are calling learning mode. Essentially, what it is a new mode for the model where instead of providing answers directly to students, it will employ a variety of methods to try and help the student work through their problems on their own. So this could be like asking the student questions to facilitate their thinking process, or highlighting fundamentals over the individual answers to problems in the case of things like math. Also providing templates for things such as research papers, study guides, and outlines. Then on the other hand, you have OpenAI, who announced that ChatGPT Plus would be free for all college students from now through the end of the month of May. GPT Plus basically just allows users to upload larger files, send larger messages, and also gain access to their voice mode and, as they call it, deep research mode. And according to ChatGPT's website, all of this stems from the goal to help students get through finals. So as you can see here, along with the announcement, they provided a list of useful features that ChatGPT has that they believe will help students get through their finals. This includes the ability to upload and summarize documents, to find sources for any reports related to a particular topic faster, to potentially brainstorm ideas. If a student is struggling to figure out what to write next, ChatGPT may be able to provide tips there. Kind of the same thing, spark creativity, as well as using the voice feature to do things like practice a foreign language or prep for interviews. But I have some concerns when it comes to these things. Of course, AI chatbots can be a great tool in research and for the purposes of learning different material and whatnot, but the unfortunate truth is that most students will see AI as nothing more than a cheat code to complete their assignments. So while these companies say that these promotions are to help students better understand their classes, a lot of students are just going to see it as an opportunity to generate their essays at a faster rate. So I'm concerned because the way OpenAI is advertising their student deal here, it kind of uses word choices that hint towards it being like the easy way out, which is really not the mindset that they should be encouraging in students. On the other hand, Claude, they're clearly trying to promote the right ideas in terms of learning and like having the AI ask questions as opposed to providing answers to help the student come up with their own answers, right? But at the same time, there doesn't seem to be anything preventing students from simply turning the learning mode off. So my concern is that students will take advantage of the opportunities that these AI tools are providing, but for the wrong reasons. But not only that, both of these AI companies have created partnerships with several colleges for each company. So ChatGPT has partnered with CSU as well as 15 other universities. Meanwhile, Claude has partnered with LSE, Northeastern, Champlain. But these partnerships are not the thing that is concerning to me. The thing that is concerning to me, most of all, is that Claude has partnered with the learning management software Canvas. And while they haven't released specifics on what exactly this partnership means, if their goal is to integrate the Claude AI systems into Canvas, it's like so over. I don't just say that because I think students having an AI tool integrated into the same website where they submit their assignments is a bad idea, but also because if Claude and Canvas do this, and if they find any amount of success doing this, then other AI companies are going to notice, are going to try and do the same. And in particular, I'm concerned about Google, which owns its own AI tool, Gemini, because not only does Google own Gemini, but they also own Google Classroom, which, unlike Canvas, which is more oriented towards like colleges and higher learning institutions and whatnot, Google Classroom is most frequently used in classrooms from kindergarten to 12th grade. So I hate to be a doomer, I just feel like if Google tries to integrate Gemini into Google Classroom in any sort of way, it's over. I feel like exposing kids to these kinds of AI tools at such a young age is not the right way to set these kids up for success in the way that these companies think it will. AI can be a good tool. It has its uses. But I don't think this is the right use. In the long run, I feel like kids will just become more reliant on these tools instead of trying to discover information and work through difficult problems on their own. But luckily, nothing has happened yet, so there's nothing we have to worry about immediately. But I do think it's important to stay cautious and monitor how these tools are being used and potentially integrated into the systems that are used by students, particularly those in kindergarten and elementary school grade levels. But next up, I want to talk about the iPhone. We all know the iPhone, the revolutionary cell phone product created by our boy Steve Jobs, the iPod, phone, and internet all wrapped into a single package. But to be honest, it's a package that has basically looked the same for the past few years. I think we've all heard the joke that every year Apple releases a new phone that looks almost exactly the same as the phone from the previous year. And it seems like Apple might be starting to agree with that idea, because it's being rumored that Apple may be planning some bold changes to their design for the iPhone leading up to its 20th anniversary. These rumors come from Mark Grumman from Bloomberg, who said that Apple is considering a foldable design for the iPhone for the first time ever, as well as potentially going for an even thinner design, working towards the vision of Jony Ive, one of the original iPhone designers, of having the iPhone be similar to like a single sheet of glass. All of this is interesting to talk about, but like I said, it's only rumors. After all, the 20th anniversary of the iPhone is not for another 2 years, and then even like 2 months after that. So it'll likely be quite some time before we hear any official confirmation about these features. But on the other hand, the standard development cycle for a smartphone is typically around 2 to 3 years, so it's not impossible that someone with insider knowledge could be leaking plans for the new iPhone, because it would have just started development right about now. So it's possible that this is true, but until we hear anything official, we will just have to wait and see what happens. Moving on to something that, of course, I have to mention. Last week, Nintendo held their Nintendo Direct for the Nintendo Switch 2, where they made a bunch of announcements related to the product in anticipation of its June 5th release date. As you might expect, a large portion of the Direct was spent discussing some of the newer features of this updated Switch, which includes a 1080p larger screen, a variable refresh rate up to 120 Hz, up to 4K output when the Switch is in docked mode, as well as support for NVIDIA's AI upscaling and even potentially ray tracing features. Not only that, but Nintendo also officially invented online game chat with their built-in video chat feature for the Switch that, frankly, looks a heck of a lot like Discord. But it's great to see Nintendo making strides, inventing new things never done before, such as game chat. Who would have ever guessed? There was also a bunch of game announcements, both first party and third party. They started by debuting Mario Kart World, the latest entry in the Mario Kart series, featuring open world exploration and a continuous Grand Prix where you drive from one track to the next, all through all 4 courses on the Grand Prix. They also announced Donkey Kong Bonanza, the first entry in the Donkey Kong series in over a decade, the last game in the series coming out in 2014, and it is also the first truly 3D Donkey Kong game in correct Donkey Kong 64. That's right, actually you're right. The second truly 3D. Thank you. But it does still feature 2D sections as well as a variety of new gameplay mechanics. They also announced that GameCube games would be available to play on the Switch 2 through the Nintendo Online service, which definitely made a lot of older Nintendo fans happy. Also, Nintendo announced that they are reviving and reimagining a fan favorite GameCube game, Kirby Air Riders, which is just like a kart racer-like game directed by the one and only Masahiro Sakurai, known as the creator of not only Kirby, but the Super Smash Bros. Series. So good to see him back, of course. We also had a bunch of third-party announcements. There was From Software, who announced a new game, their next game called The Duskbloods, which many people are referring to as Bloodborne 2, I think including you, Max. Yeah, there it is. And the Direct was also a treat for a lot of indie game fans, because two of the most anticipated indie games had some news. Starting off with Deltarune, which had an announcement that their third and fourth chapters would be releasing on the same day as the Switch 2's release, January 5th, and the second game being Hollow Knight Silk Song, which is the first piece of news in about 3 years that we have gotten, which was an official announcement that the game will be releasing sometime this year. So for all of the Silk Song fans out there, you can finally remove your clown makeup because the game is coming out this year. But all the fun stuff aside, following the Nintendo Direct, concerns began to be raised about the pricing of games on the upcoming console, because it was found that not only would the console itself cost $450 in the US, which is significantly more than the original price of this original Switch, but also that the first-party games on the console were announced to cost $70 to $80 depending on the game. And a lot of people say that this price hike is unfair, especially in a time where a lot of people have less spending money to put into more expensive hobbies like gaming. But on the other hand, while video game prices have stayed the same for a very long time, that also means that adjusted for inflation, games have recently costed the least they have ever cost. Even back in like the 70s and 80s, games are being sold for still $40 to $60, which in today's money is like almost $200. So in all honesty, it was only a matter of time before a price spike like this happened. But still, obviously, it's not a great thing to see. But if you are bothered by these prices, I do have a recommendation for you. Buy indie games. There are so many indie games, some of which are higher quality than some AAA big studio games. And typically, they are like half the price of a typical AAA game. So that's my recommendation, at least. Anyhow, with that all wrapped up, we can move on to our next story, which actually we kind of started talking about last week when we were talking about how Mark Zuckerberg said he was planning to hopefully get Facebook back to its roots, discussing how he was willing to even sacrifice short-term performance goals for the platform if it meant that the platform would be a better, more communal place in the long run. Well, this week, Facebook replaced their fact-checking tool that had existed in Facebook for some time with a new community notes system. For anyone who's been on social media, you will immediately recognize that this system is basically taking a page directly out of Twitter/X's community notes, which have been pretty successful on the platform so far, but Facebook did go into some detail about how the specifics of their community note system will work. So firstly, they mentioned that this change from fact-checking to community notes will only be applied in the US to start, but if it goes well, they may expand it to be a global feature in the future. And additionally, it's not going to be the case that just anyone will be able to do these community notes. While Facebook will not have the ability to moderate posts that receive community notes, only accounts belonging to people 18 years old or older and who have an account that has been in good standing and at least 6 months old will be able to write notes. And that notes will only be applied to standard posts. So things such as ads and similar things will be excluded. And the feature has just been released as of yesterday, as of recording this video. So it will be interesting to see what the opinions of users are on this new system, especially in comparison to Twitter's community notes and seeing if maybe one works better than the other, if people prefer one over the other. Next up, we are discussing the Big Don and his favorite word, tariffs. because despite the many successes that the tech industry has been seeing in the past few months, all of the big tech companies started to work up a bit of a sweat at the sight of the new tariffs that Trump plans to enact. There's a lot of things going on here. I'm just going to highlight a few of the stories. The Nintendo Switch 2, which we just talked about, had to delay their pre-orders for their new product to assess whether or not they will have to potentially raise the price on the already expensive console in the US specifically. Then you have Apple, who was literally airlifting iPhones from India and China factories with the hopes of importing them into the US before the tariffs were put into place, along with them looking to Brazil as a potential location for new factories in order to minimize their production costs post-tariff. Then you have TikTok, which has been teetering on being banned for a second time as the deal with ByteDance to sell off the US branch of TikTok sort of hangs in the balance. They had the deadline to comply with the US desires extended by 75 days, while China continues to object to these new tariffs that have been put in place. So I guess for now, we've got another 75 days. We will see whether or not TikTok ends up getting banned in another 2.5 months, or if they work something out. You also have other companies like Klarna and StubHub, which for the record, don't use Klarna, but anyhow. They were both planning to go public very soon, but have decided to delay their initial public offerings following the tariff announcement. And then you have Nvidia, where tech firms in China were rushing to order mass amounts of Nvidia chips, not only ahead of the tariffs, but also ahead of a potential chip trade ban from the US to China, which, in all honesty, is just another big win for Nvidia, but while the panic of all of this is occurring in the tech sector, the tariffs seem like they will likely be going through no matter what. So what this means for the future, we can't really say just yet. We will have to wait and see. But for now, there's not much we can do beyond simply waiting it out and seeing what happens. Our next story is a little bit of an interesting one, more in the realm of biology. The dire wolf might be making a comeback, as the company Colossal Biosciences reported that its scientists have successfully brought back a version of the dire wolf by modifying the DNA of gray wolf pups to include traits from the DNA of the dire wolves. This follows the same company's announcement earlier last month when they created what they dubbed woolly mice, which are basically mice with some DNA taken from woolly mammoths to create mice with long, fluffy fur. And apparently, this news is so groundbreaking that it became a Time cover article, which you can find the full article online. It is a very long article, but in the article, they emphasize that these wolves are not true dire wolves. They only modified 14 of the most important genes to give these wolves the characteristics that would make them most resemble the dire wolf. But to me, the point that I want to make here is that we should definitely be exercising caution when it comes to experimenting with live animals in this manner. It is always important to remember that scientific progress may be cool, but also it may not always be ethical. So just saying anything in the name of scientific progress is probably not the best approach. We have seen negative outcomes of this approach in the past with psychology and things like lobotomies, right? And it has also more recently become a point of concern in the computer science community with AI. But regardless of the field you study, it's always important to take a step back and asking yourself if what you're doing is necessary or if it is leading to some objective net positive for the world. But I'll leave that at that. For our last story of the day, I would like to take a quick minute to highlight a bit of research that has been done in the tech community in this past week. A few days ago, a standalone developer who goes by the username Nizarma on GitHub released the first version of a tool that they are calling Igatha, which is an open source phone app for iOS and Android that allows for SOS signaling between devices without the need for traditional cellular networks. The app allows users to manually send SOS signals, or additionally, they can enable automatic disaster detection, where if the device senses that you may have been in a disaster situation, the user will be prompted with a message asking if they are okay. And if the user says they need help, or if they don't respond for 2 minutes, SOS signaling will begin automatically. To achieve this signaling without using cellular or Wi-Fi, Igatha makes use of Bluetooth. And the benefits to this approach is that the signal will be much less susceptible to things like signal jamming and manipulation. Additionally, Bluetooth consumes lower amounts of battery, meaning that the signals will likely be able to be sent for a long time, even in the event where the battery on the phone is maybe already low. The developer hopes to add the ability for searchers to trigger the speakers and/or flashlight of a distressed user's device to hopefully help with locating them. But the developer is also transparent about the limitations of this technology, mainly that the range of Bluetooth signaling is about 10 to 30 meters on average, but there is always the potential to use Bluetooth extenders to boost this range. What I kind of want to emphasize here, this program, you can check the commit history on GitHub. It is just this guy making this app on his own. People are submitting issues and requests for features. He is fixing the issues and adding the features on his own without anyone else's help, which is wildly impressive. And I really respect the dedication of a single person to create not only this tool, but to create it and make it open source, free to use, and basically solely for the benefit of the world as a whole. I really respect that. I think that's really impressive. But that brings us to the end of Tech Tuesday. So thank you very much for watching, and tune in next week to see what happens next in the world of tech. And I will see you next time.